Hello everybody, my name's Kobe and welcome to this channel. Now, as I did in a previous video, I will talk just a little bit about the game and then I will go into why this video is called what it's called. So, firstly about the game. You'll see a couple of shots of me in the video where I have bad connection in PlanetSide2 and then you can see player models jumping through the air, and that's not fun. Also, you'll see me shooting someone and he'll die later, but not on my screen. So, yeah. So those are some examples of lag in PlanetSide2. If you experience those, well, I advise you to either check your connection because it's probably fucking up, or just relocate to another battlefield where there's less clutter on the screen, so less people there, or less Vanna sovereignty, because the Vanna sovereignty have a gun. In my previous video, when I showed off friendly fire, one of them was using it. It shoots like balls with a trail behind it, and it's it's not hard to compute. Your computer can run it fine, but if you got like a fuck ton of people shoot with that gun, it will clutter up your screen. Your computer will have a bit of trouble generating frames, so you'll experience a frame drop. You'll be lagging. It's a lag-inducing weapon, which is really just a not so polite strategy because you're using the setup of people against them. I don't feel really comfortable with that because, well, some people just can't afford a better setup like I couldn't before I got out from school. So it's a bit of a nasty way of playing, but it happens. Now, I don't want to confuse frames with connection. But somehow it's linked in PlanetSide2. I don't really know how it works. I don't know anything of the netcode or the workings of the engine of PlanetSide2. I do know it's an in-house engine, so it's not like the Unreal engine or the Unity 3D engine. It's that they either made themselves or customized. So I'm also not going to look into that because it'd be a pain in my arse and I don't have the time for it. But yeah, drawing frames, that's where the Vanna sovereignty gun comes into play. The computer has to calculate where everything goes, what corresponds with what it should show on the screen, so the actual frame. And if you just let a fuck ton happen at once, your computer just has a hard time keeping up and drawing all the frames. And it should at least generate 24 to 30 frames for you to see a fluid image, otherwise it will just be cut. You'll have experienced this somewhere, probably. It's not really an uncommon thing. But yeah, what I wanted to talk about outside of the game, there's been something bothering me very much so. So I work in an institution that's based around anthroposophy, or however you pronounce it or accentuate it. So it's based around the vision of Rudolf Steiner. And if editing me has any skills, we'll probably put a little picture of him on screen, but I don't think he can do that. Anyhow, I don't have anything against Rudolf Steiner. He's a decent guy. He actually made some decent progress on a couple of things, like the Waldorf education, which is based around his views. He also did a big thing for biodynamic agriculture, which is good. But there's a little bit something that goes along with it, with anthroposophy, that I do not like. That's anthroposophical medicine. It's based on homeopathy. And it really vexes me that people still believe in that. Anthroposophy, as opposed to homeopathy, uses slightly more concentrated stuff, but it's still basically water or sugar. So it doesn't really help. You're just drinking water. Let me just explain to you what homeopathy is about. It's alternative medicine, but a shitty one. Homeopathy came about in the late 18th, early 19th century. It was invented by a doctor, actually, a response to the really bad state of conventional medical aid in that time. So he invented homeopathy based upon findings from the 17th century or the 16th century or even before that. It's one of his things. So to cure a symptom of a disease, you will have to take medicine which is a diluted version of a product that actually makes you give similar symptoms as your disease. Now, there's a whole thing about vaccination, but that's something completely different, although it might sound the same. Modern science, not even that modern science, has already proven that wrong. It's just bollocks. The other thing it proclaims is that water has memory. That if you put molecule or an atom or anything else if you put it in water, you shake it a certain way, hammer shaking I believe it's called in English, and the more you shook, the more potent your solution gets. That was his way of thinking. The water would actually take the properties of what was dissolved in it. By now, we do know that that's wrong. In the 1960s, early 1980s, there was a scientist who thought he had proven that could happen, that water has memory, while other scientists could not replicate his results, which is one of those things that has to be possible for things to be scientific. You should be able to replicate results. They found it was bogus. So about 15 years later, they took away his prize that he had won and fired him from the university he worked at because he was so neglected towards his research. So water and memory, not a thing. The whole logic behind homeopathy has been proven false, and still I'm working at an institution and they promote it. I work with people who aren't really able to think for themselves. I got a guy of 43 who's been taking homeopathic stuff, solvents, powders. He doesn't have anything to say about it, they'll just give it to him. He doesn't have that choice to do because he can't speak. And he's also not that smart. If I would estimate where he's at, I believe it would be around 18 months old. So yeah, a bit of a discrepancy between the actual age and the mental age and the mental stage of this guy. But yeah, it's really stupid that an institution gives it to. And now comes the part where what really bothers me. There have been numerous points at which science has come in and proven that homeopathy does not work. But if you try to talk about that with someone who believes in homeopathy, like of course a couple of my co-workers do, you'll get into a very frustrating argument where they just deny what you say, where they say that homeopathy cannot be observed with everyday science because it follows other things. For example, homeopathy also rejects, well, classical homeopathy, very important thing, rejects the notion that you can cure a disease with a certain product. The idea is that you take in account the whole of the human and the symptoms, then you give him a medication that will help him and just him. That's the idea. Now, what modern day science does, if you have a headache, despite of who you are, despite of where you come from, have some paracetamol, have an aspirin, and be on your way. Now, there is something to say that modern day science would also look at how people react to certain products. I, for example, know two people who are pretty unfazed if they take Valley, who don't really have any effect, so which is quite extraordinary. I couldn't take that shit. If I took that, I would be out in less than half an hour. I would just be knocked out on the floor. But yeah, they don't. So that's a very important thing. The problem now is, modern day science does it like that, like on the symptoms. But homeopathy does as well. And why people can't see that happens is annoying. You got classical homeopathy, complex homeopathy, and medicalized homeopathy, something. And they both prescribe medication, or alternative medication, on the basis of the symptoms. So that argument goes out of the window. The other thing is, it's us versus them mentality, like scientist versus homeopathy. Now, something that really comes to mind is that a very big amount of homeopathy doctors come back from homeopathy saying that it doesn't work. It does not have any effect bigger than a placebo. And that's a big thing. Does homeopathy work? Nah, it works in the same rate as if you would give a sick person sugar pill, placebo pill. Now, scientists have disproven homeopathy, but there are also a couple of things from inside the homeopathic community that do not add up. There have been several homeopaths who have done studies that have found that homeopathy does not work beyond the limits of a placebo. And the most striking thing that comes to mind for me is the NCCAM, so the National Center for Complementary and Alternative Medicine, got over the last decade approximately $1 million to prove the workings of homeopathy. And within that decade, and despite that they had a research fund that's bigger than a lot of modern day medicines, who are much more important, there have been happening researches on cancer with less money than that, and they could not prove the workings of homeopathy. So independent researchers and even unindependent researchers cannot prove the workings of homeopathy. So I don't know, why is this still a thing? It's so ingrained in some European mindset and it immensely. If it was just homeopathy, I don't mind. If you want to take stuff if you want to drink water, you can. Actually, you need it. Drink water. Just be mindful that you will pay a fuck ton of money for it, where you can just go to the grocery store and get some. But what is dangerous about homeopathy and alternative medicine is that it can turn you away from conventional medicine, and that's what annoyed me at my work. We have a couple of people that really would benefit from regular medicine, like actually getting things they need, but they stick to homeopathy because some co-workers think it's good, and their caretakers, like their parents or the ones responsible for them outside of the institution, have something against modern medicine and then go to homeopathy. And homeopathy cultivates actually that adverse feeling towards conventional medicine, and that really brings out some very dangerous stuff. Like, for example, India. Homeopathy tries to cure tuberculosis, diarrhea and HIV. Those are 3 things of which you will die. So those are some very serious things, and it's not only happening in India, by the way. And why would you pull away someone from the medicine that can actually help them, that has been proven to help them? You take people away from the medicine that actually work and put them on something that you know does not work. And I can't get that. Rather sad. But what really got to me was the story of an acquaintance of mine who had someone in his family who had just turned 24 and he was diagnosed with cancer. And his parents were of the homeopathic kind. And why I did not know this guy, I felt really sorry for my acquaintance. But he was on medicine. He went through chemotherapy, stuff like that. Did not look too great, but it was working in a way because he was going to die. That was for certain, and that's a horrible realization. That's something horrible to live with, I think. But at a certain point, his parents thought it was enough with modern day medicine. They probably could not accept the fact that their child was going to die, so they turned to homeopathy. Apparently there is this notion that mistletoe, that's a dilution of mistletoe, and a dilution so hard that there isn't any mistletoe left in it, can help against cancer. So they used that. The guy died 2 months later. With modern medicine, the estimations would have been a year and a half. So yeah, I don't believe that homeopathy actually takes away lives in this modern world, but they do take away years of life. So yeah. But anyhow, I wanted to get that out there, I wanted to vent on it. I hope it didn't get anyone too sad. I hope you enjoyed what I played. My following videos will be a lot more cheerful, I hope. But I wanted to get it off my chest. So for whoever finds this, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed yourself. And I hope you have a nice day. Bye.